Welcome to Office Hours. Whether you're new to the acupuncture profession or have been at it for decades, this is the place where we discuss all things Chinese medicine and more. Join Toby Daly, a seasoned acupuncturist of the Sam tradition, and Angelique Britt, a nurse turned acupuncturist who is brand new to the field, as they explore topics in and around the world of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. There's something for everyone here. Drop in anytime.
Okay. Sabine Wilms, thanks so much for coming to Office Hours and spending some time with Angelique and I.
Thank you for having me. It's delightful.
Okay, great. If you wouldn't mind, I think a lot of our listeners will be really familiar with your background and your work, but would you mind giving us like a brief sketch of what you've been working on, how you came into the profession? And then if you could bring us all the way up to one of your latest projects, the Pebble and the Cosmic Pond with Leo Locke, if you could bring us through there, if you wouldn't mind setting us up like that.
Okay, the 5-minute version or
Yeah,
the 2-hour version?
the broad brush stroke, so you can set us up for the rest of our conversation.
So I started out, I come from a family they're all biomedical doctors. So I went the other direction, rejected all that, and went into East Asian studies to study Chinese philosophy, and somehow came back to medicine and anthropology as well. And medicine, somehow I took some classes in medical anthropology, and my professor was like, "Oh my God, you can read the ancient stuff. This is so awesome." So I learned from my anthropology professors how to ask questions to try and understand early Chinese culture. And I happened to be pregnant at the time, and the female body is a really juicy topic. So I translated a text on gynecology. And my Buddhism professor told me because I wanted to know about the relationship between medicine or the influence of Buddhism on medicine and medicine on Buddhism. And he told me that was not a thing in ancient China, in early China. And then my other professor told me that there was no gynecology in early China. So of course I had to pick a topic that proved them wrong. So that was my dissertation. And then I just started over time teaching practitioners in addition to being originally an academic, because practitioners care about what I do and what I know in a very different way from academics. So I feel like I'm really lucky because I'm not a clinically licensed practitioner. My background is as an academic and a translator, but I have an audience and students and colleagues who practice. And I think the older I get, the more I just acknowledge that healing is like, it's in my bloodline on both my mom and my dad's and all my relatives and grandparents and my daughter's side. So it's been like a really long, and then in there, I was like a biodynamic goat farmer, and somehow that related to fertility and agriculture and healing the land. I don't know, like nothing really makes sense, but somehow I've ended up in a place in my life, which I love to share with people. It's like, I just have made decisions, some of it dumb luck, but I followed my heart, and I've always wanted to do something that is meaningful to me. And sometimes I haven't made any money at it. I've worked really, really hard, but I'm now in a place where I get to sit at a desk looking at the ocean, having my goats and my little mini farm, and teaching students, creating classes with my business partner, Leo Locke, who happens to be in Vietnam. And I just got to visit him and spend a few months in Vietnam working on creating a class on nurturing the inner nature, like longevity, spiritual, physical cultivation. And here I get to have a conversation with you guys. So I really want to encourage all the upcoming people who listen to our sorts of podcasts. And then Leo and I had the Pebble in the Cosmic Pond podcast. You know, I feel like the young practitioners enter our profession with most of them with this passion and dedication towards making the world a better place through their presence. And I really feel like if you follow your heart, it's possible. And the world like I don't know, there's a way in which you can, maybe it's stubbornness, I don't know, maybe it's luck, And I'm sure you too have that experience, right? Where we can create a better world with our.
Yeah, I think so. Especially, I mean, it's so great. Your role really helps inform what we do in clinical work. A huge impact for me was your Journal of Chinese Medicine article on Sun Simiao. This is several years ago. Made it just a gigantic impact on me. And then one of my favorite Chinese medicine books of all the Chinese medicine books
Yeah.
available is Humming with Elephants, which that was just fantastic. So maybe if you don't mind, take us into your work with Humming with Elephants, right? What we were thinking about that. Again, just from my perspective, it's an amazing text because we get to look in Su Wen 5, but not usually like a translation of it, but through the translator's eyes of Su Wen 5. So did the project start out like that, or how did that go?
No, what I really learned in that process is that, none of us know, like each of us have all this knowledge in our heads, and we think everybody around us has that same knowledge. So when I wrote that book, so the book it's basically just a transcript of my notes based on teaching that text
Hmm.
over many years at the NUNM, the National University of Natural Medicine, in several different classes. I was teaching a class on history of medicine. I was helping with the foundations. I was doing the classics, whatever the classical texts course. So whenever we would cover that chapter, my translation and my discussion and my notes just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it was like, all right, I'll just, translate the first 5 chapters and turn it into a little book. And then I looked at Su Wen 5 and it turned into a big book all in its own right. And when I published this, I was actually really worried that it was so obvious, because to me, everything I wrote in that book is so obvious because that's the world I live in. And then my friend Deborah Betts, I sent her a copy, the gynecology, the I don't know if you're familiar with Deborah Betts, who wrote
Yeah,
the book on
very,
pregnancy.
very familiar with her. Yeah.
Yeah. And she was like, Sabine, this is brilliant. This is the best book you've ever written. And I'm like, what? So it was basically just a transcript of what I'd been teaching for many years at college and at conferences and things like that. So it wrote itself actually pretty quickly. It was a fun book to just put the stuff together.
Okay, that's amazing because yeah, that's not just my opinion. I was talking to a colleague the other day, and they were saying, "Oh, that's my favorite of your works too, is that Humming with Elephants." Again, because we get the translation plus the translator's view while we're reading that, and it's just so valuable, especially that particular chapter in the Su Wen. So there's so much that comes out of that. I mean, that's the basis. I mean, if we only had that chapter, we could probably recreate, a huge portion of Chinese medicine because all the basic theories are presented in that chapter and everything like that. But it's great to have your looking through your eye. It's like looking through your eyes at that text, and it was really valuable. So I highly recommend that to other people. I often do.
I love that chapter. And
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is just like, I just feel like it's inspiring. It's beautiful. It really is. Like yin and yang and the 5 agents, 5 phases, 5 elements, whatever you want to call them. That's the root of our medicine. And that chapter makes this argument that our medicine is so much bigger than just, point prescriptions and matching patterns to formulas. To me, that chapter is just such a beautiful condensation of this grand vision of the medicine of it's not correspondences, is resonances. The resonances, and it's all about chi and microcosm, macrocosm. So I love the text, and I think my work is really inspired by the attempt to take the classics out of that dry academic context where if you read Su Wen 5 in translation, just the text, it can be the best translation. You just don't get it because there's no way you can read a sentence in English words, and know all the beauty that's in that text, to me.
Okay. Now I have a request from the rest of the profession. What about the other 80 chapters in the Su
Yes.
Wen? Is that on you? You have like a big whiteboard of like projects going forward, and could you put the other
Sure.
80 chapters of?
Sure. I'm finishing two books that I got a ton of work done in Vietnam. So
Uh,
I'm finishing up a book on pregnancy, and then I'm doing a book on Yang Xing, on nurturing our nature, which is based on this class that I taught with Leo Locke 2 years ago, and that we're gonna teach again starting in September. And that's about physical and spiritual and moral cultivation, self-cultivation, and also longevity practices for the profession to share with their community and patients. So,
awesome.
so those are priority because I figure that's Sun Simiao and that's never been translated. And the
Mm,
Su Wen, there are so many other versions out there. But I do have most of the Su Wen chapters in draft form with lengthy
ooh.
commentary. So it's totally on the list.
Okay,
Yeah, eventually.
that's really exciting to hear. Do you mind talking about those two books, or is it are you not able to talk about? Are they still too much in flux to talk about, or are you okay?
Oh,
Okay,
one is the pregnancy one is basically done. So that's
great.
a translation of the 10 months, the Yang Tai, the 10-month on nurturing the fetus, or it's really about nurturing pregnancy. So
Mm,
I've realized that Tai, the character, doesn't just mean fetus, it also means pregnancy. So it's
mm,
about nurturing not the fetus, but nurturing the mother and the fetus,
ooh.
which is a really essential difference.
Yeah, that something just clicked in my head about that. So yeah, that's really important, right? Of course, in order to nurture the fetus, you have to nurture the mom, right? That makes perfect sense. You can't
But
directly.
yes, and it's even bigger. It's the ultimate goal is in biomedicine. I think I don't want to put down biomedicine, but I think in our current dominant model and in our culture, the focus in reproductive medicine is on the baby. And one of my areas of interest, and that's also why Leo and I did a course on postpartum pampering. And
Mm,
that's another book on my list of almost finished manuscripts is a volume on postpartum care. But it's not just about the fetus. It's about the family and
mm,
nurturing life means taking care of the mothers and not just cranking out babies. So this whole prejudice that we have against early Chinese medicine being misogynistic, patriarchal, patrilineal, and like people in our profession, some people still have prejudices and they say that our modern Chinese medicine is so much more superior to what's in the classics because we live in this enlightened culture where, we have the integrative medicine and there's progress. And I'm like, no, actually, when I read Sun Simiao, there's a care for the female body that I don't see in modern biomedicine or the popular culture, like concerns about menstrual conditions, whether the woman wants to get pregnant or not. And so I'm a big advocate of reproductive care, not just for not just with the aim of taking care of the producing babies, but really the full circle of the
mm.
family.
What does that look like for those 10 months then? Can you give us an overview of those 10 months? What's happening? Is that too hard to do?
Well, for every month, no. We can take this conversation wherever you want to.
Okay.
So there is advice. There's information on the development of the fetus from month to month to month, and then there is for each month you get an associated channel that is in charge of nurturing the pregnancy, and so each month is associated with the channel and with the 5 elements or dynamic agent. I like 5 agents better. So you go through the months and it actually matches nicely with biomedical knowledge where in the beginning it's all about avoiding miscarriage, right? So
Mm,
you are avoiding fright, the scattering upward, and the fear, the going downward, the sudden exposure to emotional turmoil. You're really careful about rotten foods. So in the beginning, it's really important that the mother is protected and living in stillness. And then in the middle, she's encouraged to be really active and move like a monkey, and also with diet, eat the food of eat the meat of predatory beasts and watch like lions and rhinoceroses. And in the third month, this is the key time when the fetus, after the third month, the sex of the fetus is set. So up to the third month, you can manipulate the sex by exposing the mother to jewels, to female things, female associated things if you want a daughter, and to male associated things if you want a male and a son and that sort of thing. And then, so yeah, it's really cool. And then in the middle, she's encouraged to be really active, move and shake a lot. And then in the end, it's all about releasing, letting the hair down, so to speak, releasing the belt and having her weighted on and eating sweets and really relaxing and feeling safe. And then in the end, taking certain substances to help the birth go smoothly.
What two channels do they leave off? Because all 10 months have a channel and then two are left off.
Wait. The heart? And I think the Sun Simiao is part of it. The heart is definitely left off.
That's interesting.
Well, you don't treat the heart, right? You treat the pericardium. So you you never manipulate the emperor. So that makes sense from a classical perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the other one? That's a good question.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stump you.
Yeah, you did stump me. I have to think about that. Sorry. You're a channel person. And
well, yeah,
I'm not so much a channel person.
Okay. But anyway, so each channel gets a month for 10 months. So I just did a quick math there. But anyways, maybe that's a teaser for people to get the book. They can find out which channel's left off besides the heart. That's good.
Sure. Thank you for getting me out of that one.
All right. What about, can we talk about the other book too? Is that still too in flux?
We totally can. I mean, I've been teaching it. So basically it's the translation and both of these books they're literal translation of different volumes, different texts from Sun Simiao, from the 1,000 Gold, the Beiji Tianjin Yaofang, the 1,000 Gold formula. So the Yang Xing, the Nurturing Our Nature, is volume 27, which is one of the last chapters. And it's a really complicated text because it's not just medicine, but it's a lot of Buddhist and Taoist concepts and terminology flowing into and merging with the medical language. So that I've been working on that. People have been asking me about that for decades. And it's been really great to have Leo Locke to help me with the translation, because he's extremely knowledgeable in Buddhist texts and in medical history in general.
And Taoist texts, right?
Yeah.
I heard him talk before about meditation sickness, and it was really helpful. I have a really good friend that's suffering from meditation sickness right now. It was great to have him with all his historical perspective on all that. It was really valuable.
Yeah. And then I'm always including the Zhang Lu, the 17th century, I think, a commentator, the only commentator on this text by Sun Simiao. So I
didn't realize that. I just in my mind I imagine we'd be like the Su Wen, we've got dozens or hundreds, right? Just one. Wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting, huh?
What's the reason for that? Just one commentator over having it for all that time?
I mean, one thing is that it's a very different text. The Yellow Emperor's Classic, as you know, is a really complicated text, and it makes sense. And it's much more of a philosophical text. So the commentary really is necessary. And it's also an earlier text, so it's more of a, classic in that sense, because it's from the Han Dynasty, whereas Sun Simiao's text is a collection of formulas mostly. So it's much more of a clinical text. And if you're a person who knows how to read classical Chinese, for the most part, the formulas are fairly straightforward, where you can read the symptoms, you read the ingredients, the indications, ingredients, and the preparation. But the juiciest part are the theoretical essays, and they are pretty challenging. And especially that volume, the Yang Xing volume, it's a really hard text. So I've been working on it for decades, and now I've been teaching it with Leo. We did it 2 years ago, and then we're currently preparing to teach it again. That's been the best way. I love teaching to prepare for writing a book, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit less hardcore, right? You're sharing drafts and you're discussing them with the student.
Direct
really
feedback from clinicians. Yeah. Where's that class going to be held from?
It's on Zoom.
Platform? Okay. No, but I mean
happygoatproductions.com.
Okay, great. All right.
Yeah, you can find all my books and everything at happygoatproductions.com.
Awesome. Okay, I was going to let Angelique ask you questions now because I got a dozen, but I'm going to try and hold back.
I always, when I have the opportunity just to listen to the discourse of two folks who've been in this profession for so long, I love to just listen. But I'm curious, I'm newer to the profession. I'm almost 2 years in, and it's my second profession. I was a nurse for a long time before that.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's nice to have the merging of the two mindsets sometimes not so much. But, one of the things that, I feel like I'm on this little boat floating in the sea of knowledge that I'm never going to be able to learn all of. And I know I've got classmates that I speak to that we have this fantasy of being able to learn how to read classical Chinese ourselves. And I understand you teach lots of folks how to do this. And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that and when one should maybe delve into that or not, or just sort of any gems you have around that.
It's such a great question. And I think there are people there are people who have a brain that is easy, that has a like for me, and maybe part of it is that I grew up in Europe, and I started studying Latin and Greek when I was in 5th grade, and we went to Italy and France when I was a little kid, and my parents would just leave me in France, with a bunch of French kids, and so I grew up with a lot of foreign languages around. So that really helps, which a lot of Americans have not had that exposure. And that makes it, I've been teaching American students now for a long time, and it's hard. I think it's really important to be clear that you do not, now there are so many high quality teachers and publications and online courses available for for practitioners who don't speak Chinese, that, don't put any pressure on yourself. It's a big project.
Yeah.
It's really, really fun. I love teaching. I love teaching classical Chinese. It's such a weird thing. I remember being in Korea, and I was at a conference on traditional East Asian medicine in Korea, like 10 years ago or something. And it was all East Asian people. It was mostly Koreans and some people some medical historians from China and Japan and Taiwan. And I was the only foreigner. And I was explaining to them what I do at my class at NUNM, at my program with this classical text program. And they were just like, are you insane? Like, what? You're teaching people who are learning to be practitioners. You are, in addition, teaching them how to read the classic. And I'm like, no, we are not creating translators. And that's what I tell my students. It's, if you want to be a translator of classical text, you really have to go to East Asia and live in that environment. And you have to be fluent in modern Chinese and in classical Chinese, and ideally in Japanese, or at least be able to read Japanese secondary literature. The practitioners can get so much clarity out of just a little bit of Chinese, a little bit of access, so that you can read the English or whatever Western language you use, the translation alongside the traditional classical Chinese text. And the same with texts like the I Ching or the Lao Tzu, because we have translation projects, translation software now. And I'm a total dinosaur with with technology, but Pleco. So the first thing I teach my students is here's how you set up your dictionaries on Pleco for classical Chinese translation. And then here is how you plop digital versions of the classics into Pleco. And then you look them up character by character by character. And then I run a 2-year training program in classical Chinese that's very involved. And it's, it's expensive and it's a big commitment. But even the first class, it's the foundations and it's 6 months or something. And we cover the basics of grammar. And if you have the very basic rules in combination with these digital tools, it's so fun for me to teach like a little bit and then read the text with people. And that's really what I kind of wanted to replicate with the Su Wen, with the Humming with Elephants book. Mm-hmm. That process of just looking at the English, looking at the Chinese, and then digging a little bit deeper. But there's no need, there's no urgency.
I'm glad to hear that. I don't feel urgency, certainly, but just sort of like I wonder. And so that sounds like I'll read your translations for now.
Yeah, and play with it. And there's so much fun that you can have with just plopping digital versions into Pleco.
Mm-hmm. We should
what
say
What do you think, Toby? About
I think anyways what I have is like a minute semi-working knowledge of Chinese language, right? And I feel like that has unlocked so many things for me to be able to directly look at things and understand what they're saying. I think that's really valuable. Like you saying Tai is not just the fetus but the mother also. I mean, that again, that's another unlock for me.
Or pregnancy,
sorry. But anyways, it's so valuable, right? Because again, right, that character's there and then you can just add more and more knowledge on it. Whereas just the English word, I guess, I think it's kind of locked in, right? If it's just if it's always translated as fetus and not pregnancy, then you're kind of, you don't get that fuller knowledge. So again, I feel like that's valuable. But again, like you said, I mean, to be a translator level, which again, it's too late for me for that kind of thing, but working knowledge, I think almost every practitioner would really benefit from just some basic working knowledge of it. Mm-hmm. It is Chinese medicine after all, right? So we should be able to look through some of the basics. And then Sabine, I wanted to thank you so much for we're working right now with having you come on to the Chinese Medicine Benevolent Academy, and then you'll be teaching some of the basics of Chinese language for the students, right? So again, so they can start off straight out the gate having some basic knowledge about what they're learning so they can directly impact things. So I think that's great. Like teaching them the tools they can fish later, especially with Pleco, is so valuable. Pleco has that tool where you can take a picture of the character and then it can import that and tell you what it is too. So I mean, it is really valuable. Once you get introduced to that tool, then again, that could help you for the rest of your career. Maybe you go to translator level, right? But otherwise, I think it's so valuable to have a working knowledge of that. The curriculum for California actually doesn't require that, but we were able to shoehorn that into our program because I think it's so valuable.
And I think it's inspiring, right? When you figure out that, like in Su Wen 5, like I think it's the second sentence where it's like, so to treat disease, you must seek. It's always translated as you must seek the root, right? And it's actually, you must pursue it in the foundation. You must pursue in. There is an in, and then the ben is not root. It's the core it's the trunk of the tree. Or the foundation, which is very different from root. It's actually way bigger. So, you can get me going. I'll talk for an hour about the difference between gun, which is root, and ben, which is trunk. And what's the difference between pursuing the root? And it's always translated as, in order to treat a symptom, you have to look for the cause of the disease. And it's actually way bigger than that. You have to look at the foundation, and it is in that text, it's so clear that it's talking about the foundation of yin and yang. So it's not saying you must look for the root of the disease, but it's saying you must track it through this foundation of yin and yang. So to me, it's like, I mean, maybe I'm just like really nerdy, but it's like if you're a new practitioner, that's like gold, right? That's so inspiring. It's like, you got to study yin and yang. Like, what does that mean in terms of summer and winter? being active and passive, rest and activity, male and female, sun and shade. And like, there's a million ways in which you can think of yin and yang and how that can contribute to cultivating the ability to heal whatever shows up in your clinic. I don't know.
I could listen to you forever. Carry on.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe let's drill down on that just a minute, because that's my understanding. I forgot about that from your book. Is I always thought gun and bun was the same. That was root, and just different ways of saying root. Can you tease that out easily for us, or is that too big of a topic?
The problem is that even in classical Chinese is already used. It's when you look at the character, it's the character of the tree with a little extra line in it. It's a depiction that focuses on the trunk. That's the original meaning of that character. But already the trunk of the tree, and I'm looking at this giant maple tree right out my window right now. And I used to run an apple orchard, and what does it take to create fertility? There's a big difference between taking care of the roots and taking care of the tree from the core. Bun it means foundation in a metaphorical sense. And I think in English, when you read the word foundation, you think roots, and then we go to the literal roots. Whereas if you really want to be literal, you talk about the core. Like the core would be a much better translation for it. Foundation that's the problem when you have a Chinese character. It's like a Venn diagram where a Chinese character means this and the English word means this, and they do overlap. So foundation is absolutely a correct way of translating Ben in many contexts. And a Chinese person would absolutely agree with that. But in this particular quote, it's in the context of the sentence before it and the sentence afterward. It's really important that it's talking about yin and yang. It's not talking about the root of the disease, but it's saying to treat disease. And even the character Bing doesn't just mean disease. It means disorder. It means social chaos. Bing, it is things that are not healthy, Bing is also a political situation, social unrest or an earthquake, or like even Bing is so much bigger. And then you must pursue it in this core of yin and yang. And then the text goes on and says yin and yang are the father and mother of creation and the palace of the Shenming and all of that, right? So the whole introductory paragraph is about yin and yang and the importance of yin and yang. And the whole chapter is about the resonant, what is it? Help me out here.
But that's what I was going to say about why you chose that. I kept meaning to say that, why you chose that title for your book, because again, it could mean the chapter of Su Wen 5 could mean, right, humming with elephants, right? That's a possible translation of it. Is that right, Sabine?
It is, yes.
Okay, but it's not, right?
It's a joke. I mean, yeah. And that's my proudest accomplishment for that book is the juicy title. I love it when I find a good title.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, again, that's fantastic because it could be translated that way, right? But it was like the resonant images, right? Isn't it the xiang, the
resonant manifestations of yin and yang? I think the great treatise on the resonant manifestations, yin yang, yin xiang, da lun. Yes.
Like, isn't this great to have a scholar on the program?
Yes.
We can just turn to for these kind of things.
I try and keep it to. I didn't even know that elephants hum.
Really? They literally hum?
Yes, I love this. I have students who are pediatricians, and my friend Patricia pointed out to me that elephants communicate at a sound level at a frequency that humans can't hear.
Yeah, fascinating.
Over like, I don't know, hundreds of miles or something. Very cool.
That's very cool.
Wait, you knew about that before you did the title or after?
I did not. When I created that title, I did not know that.
That is even cooler.
Yeah. And humming, the resonance is kind of like, it's one, I mean, it's what the humming is, I'm stretching it, the xiang is the origin of the character, the manifestation, the image, that character. When you look at it's a pictograph originally that depicted a elephant. So it's one of the potential meanings, but it's obviously not the meaning in the title of the chapter. And the humming, it's resonance, but when you're resonating, that's humming, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, but that's a good, yeah. Anyways, because otherwise people think I want to read a medical text, I want to read a like zoological text about the elephants, right? So that's good for them to know, right, where that title is coming from. But again, the whole book's like that, right? Where you just keep saying, well, could be this, could be that, taking from this angle. I just want to circle back to one more thing. So does it never mean root, or it can mean root, but just not in that context for Su Wen?
It can mean root in the metaphorical sense in which we use it in English.
Okay. But don't we, like the Shanlong Ban Cao Jing, isn't it talking about the roots and the grasses, or no? The literal roots and grasses? I'm asking you because I have your translation of the Shanlong Ban Cao Jing on my
Great
shelf,
point.
so I know you know that one.
I love how you're pushing back. This is great. And I have to think about that. Ben Cao means materia medica. Yeah. Or it means, well, this is great. It's like you're throwing things back at me. Yeah, what is the literal meaning of Ben Cao? Because we are used to it as a technical term and we translate it as materia medica when it's really information about natural substances, because as you know, it also includes animals and minerals. So that's the first problem. But Ben Cao, most literally, it refers to, it's usually translated as roots and grasses. So in modern Chinese, it's always the compound genben, the two together. So yes, ben can refer to the physical root. I don't know. I did a lot of research on this years ago, and I need to do another linguistic analysis or get Leo Locke roped into it to answer this. There might be contexts where ben is used to mean the physical roots as opposed to the trunk or the core.
Okay.
Never say yes or no clearly in Chinese, right? Like all of our listeners know that. Right? In Chinese medicine, there's never a black and white answer. It's always like, yes, in general, but and the problem with Chinese language is the language changes. So even in the Yellow Emperor's Classic, like the language, the meaning of a character, and this is what people ignore so often, that a single character completely changes often from the Han Dynasty to the Tang Dynasty. So between the Neijing and Sun Simiao, a character, and this is really tricky when you're translating a text like the Neijing that is composed of all these different textual layers. So which layer in one chapter, in a single chapter, Elizabeth Shue is the master of analyzing. She did this with the medical, the Shiji, the biographies in the Shiji.
Oh, yeah.
Where there are all these different textual layers, and this is the original textual layer, and then this is the commentary, and this is the commentary. So even within a single chapter in the Neijing, we can't just assume that it's first century, because and the Su Wen 5 is definitely one of those chapters where there are different textual layers. And the same with the Sun Simiao information on nurturing the fetus, or the information on the Yang Xing chapter. That it gets really messy. And then when you read a text from the 7th century, do you assume that the meaning of the character is based on the 7th century? Or do you read it? Like, do I read it the way Sun Simiao would have read a certain character? Or do I read it in the way that it was originally meant by the 3rd century source that Sun Simiao used and quoted? Did Sun Simiao think about, for you today, if you're reading an English quote from Shakespeare or whatever, and I don't really know any Shakespeare, but do you, when Shakespeare uses the word heart, do you read that word heart with the meaning of a biomedical doctor, a Buddhist cultivator? Or do you have any idea what Shakespeare or whatever meant when they used the word heart? Like, it gets really messy. That's why I don't give straight answers.
Okay, but that's what Angelique and I are just reconsidering with all this. We're really happy. We thought being in clinic was hard, but I guess being at the translator desk is also really hard, right? Because you're never sure in clinic, but it sounds like you're never sure translating either.
Feel like you clinicians have it a little bit. Well, no, we all have intuition, right? Like clinical practice, and in a certain way, translation as well is a balance. It's like a play between the right and the left side of your brain, where when you over intellectualize it, it just gets really, really messy. And that's where I try and encourage my students, and it's harder to do in a book, to also access the texts at some point by shutting out, I guess it's the left brain, the rational brain, and really just letting those characters stand and sink in and meditate on them, or, go to the beach or dream, or somehow access, like a Lao Tzu quote. You can analyze a quote, or Zhuangzi, you can analyze that. And then it's like a poem, analyzing a poem. I hate doing that because you basically kill the poem, the beauty of the poem.
You should feel a poem, not analyze.
Yeah. And I think the same is true for the classics.
You should feel the classics, not analyze the classics.
Yeah. They're like poetry. They're beautiful. And there's a flow. And a lot of times the characters are there because of the rhythm. And there's, like there's a sound component and an image component to each character that just gets lost in English.
How wonderful that you can experience that every day.
I know. And it's great that, I do this work and then I get clinicians, like compared to other academics. I mean, I haven't been an academic in a long time, but it's great that I translate something and then I have clinicians who are like Deborah Betts. When I used to teach with her, we used to get together regularly in like Europe and America or Australia or somewhere. Neither of us want to travel anymore. So we don't teach together anymore. But when we used to teach, it was so cool when I would like throw something out there and she would be like, oh my God, this is exactly like this, the like the newest stand of biomedical knowledge about where the fetus is at whatever, the fifth day after implantation, or, I have a totally non-scientific brain. But the overlap, it's really fun.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great. Yeah, your work is academic work, but again, it's translated into practical clinical work. So that that must be really rewarding.
Yeah.
And it has to
I
be
love the
right too, right?
translation part.
That's what we can't just get too philosophical. We have to keep it grounded in clinical reality too. So that I think that's really helpful. Otherwise, if it's just philosophical, you can just kind of drift off a little bit. But again, clinic really pulls everything back because it has to be really pragmatic.
Yeah, which is I love challenges. So that's really fun in teaching because you get that feedback. It's like, okay, great. Is this just an empty intellectual exercise? Or what does that mean for you concretely in clinic?
Yeah, can we apply it to help the 100 trillion cells of our patients when they come in the door, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And where I'm at right now, and I don't know, like where you guys stand on this, especially Angelique as a nurse. I feel like nurses are, and I started out when I was young in my dad's hospital. I thought about becoming a nurse, and then I was like, no, because this was in Bavaria, and it was the doctors. There was one male doctor. It's totally different now, but at the time the doctors were all male and the nurses were all female. And I'm like, no, I don't think that would be a good job for me. But I love the fact that nurses get to, be physical with patients. And I mean, I know this was Germany, whatever, 35 or more years ago, but nurses got to be present with the patient in a way that the visiting doctors in the white coat didn't get to be. And that's why I'm having fun with this Yang Xing pursuit in the many dimensions of healing that beyond the brain, like, there's the intellectual fact that a certain needle has a certain effect that is documented and measurable, or a certain herb or a certain formula. But then there's all these other dimensions. Both of you, like Toby, right? You're really inspired. You're a Buddhist practitioner. All I know about you is that you've worked with the monks, the Korean monks, right?
Yeah, that's my first teacher.
Yeah.
Almost 30 years ago now. Yeah.
Yeah. So how has that influenced? Can I ask you questions too?
Yeah,
Does
I
it
don't
have
know.
to be?
And Angelique and I have to check with our corporate sponsors
Yeah.
and see if that's okay. But let's assume it's okay. Yeah, you can ask me anything. So yeah, so like you were talking about before, the influence on Buddhism, Taoism on Chinese medicine. For me, the lens is Buddhism first, and then the medicine. From my teacher's introduction. So now I just see that everywhere, right? Buddhist ideas. Well, Sun Simiao, it's so overt, but a lot of the ideas in Chinese medicine are right to alleviate suffering, especially on the mundane field. And this is such a profound way to do it, right? Have the patient produce their own medicine in their body with acupuncture needles, and then alleviate suffering in the patient's body. So Buddhism and Chinese medicine for me, there's not a big separation between the two. They're really interwoven together.
Yeah, yeah. And Angelique, what do you like? You must be a practical person. Nurses are like, if you want to get anything done, if you have a nurse on the other side, it happens.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. It's what's interesting in listening to you talk about like the other dimensions. So there's when I approach part of why I think it wasn't easy. Learn Chinese medicine is not easy. There's nothing about it that's easy, but the lateral move, because nursing is so patient focused and patient centered and being there with people, that part of school and that part of learning came easy to me. It was really easy for me to be with people and continues to be easy for me to be with people. It's intellectual stuff. And so where I find my brain will get twisted is if I start seeing Western medical things, like a patient that comes in just recently was like feeling really dizzy and having some numbness in one of their legs and like has some transient headaches and like neurological things. And they've had spinal MRIs and everything is fine. So then my mind starts going to like, should they have a brain MRI? Is this something else that should be happening? And then having to shift back to be like, well, what are those signs and symptoms in Chinese medicine and how do we approach it that way? So I find that I'm having a constant dialogue with my own self, around patients as it comes, but it's been a nice transition. It's been good, I think.
Yeah.
And then spiritually, like I'm working on the self-cultivation part. I'm more eclectic, I think, and working on that because Toby, as my teacher, is very much letting me know self-cultivation is first, that you need to really work on yourself and your spirit and being able to be with people to access that dimension that you're talking about, that extra something that isn't really measurable, but is palpable, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do we cultivate that? How do we even talk about it or make space for it?
Yeah. How?
What about you, Sabina? What about you have a personal cultivation practice?
This kind of goes with when people used to challenge, like this was decades ago. I would go to these conferences and people would say all sorts of things about ancient Chinese medicine. And I would be like, actually, that's not true because I can read the text and that's not what Sun Simiao or the Yellow Emperor said. And it happened a few times that I would get shut down like, oh, Sabina, Dr. Wilms doesn't know anything because she's not a practitioner. And I used to be very apologetic about that and very much aware that I'm not a practitioner. So I look at the body. You guys have an access and an experience and an intuitive understanding of the human body as a microcosm in resonance with the macrocosm. Just by like feeling pulse, like your experience of body after body after body gives you a level of knowledge that I don't have. And now I say very proudly that I'm a practitioner of Chinese medicine. I just don't practice. I'm not clinically licensed and I don't practice Chinese medicine professionally in the meaning of medicine in modern Western culture. But to me, Chinese medicine is so much bigger. It's about harmonizing heaven and earth. I mean, it's kind of like, what do you mean by Chinese medicine? It's little things like I wake up and I think about yin and yang. Do I push myself in the morning to get out of bed early to do my qigong exercises. And I've spent a lot of time calibrating with my friend Leo Locke, who is my Buddhist advisor and my clinical advisor. So I learn a lot because we teach together, and we teach a class on, self-cultivation. So Sun Simiao talks about moderation between rest and activity, between overeating and like overindulging, like making the body comfortable and pampering the body and taxing it too much. Like, as a farmer and as a person who I've really suffered from insomnia in the past, because I have worked my body into the ground, and I have the body of a farmer, and I'm older now. So I'm German. I have overworked. I physically refuse to accept the limitations of my poor female body, throwing around too many 100-pound hay bales in the days. And I have fallen off of many half-wild Mustangs and done all sorts of fallen off of trees. I have not been kind to my body. So I'm like, what does cultivation, what does moderation look like every day as I open my eyes and look at the sunrise? Do I stay in that zone and call it meditation? Or is it like lazy? I'm too lazy to do qigong this morning. Or the cold water swimming. I love swimming in the ocean every day. Not every day right now. And it's so subtle. It's like 5 seconds are the difference between I'm pushing my body to be healthy by exposure to cold, and I'm like ramping up my Wei Qi. It's like I'm stoking the fire inside me, and it feels so, so, so good. I get out and I'm just like roar, and I run naked on the beach and with the dog, and it's like this total, it's my drug, this flood of hormones. Or am I exhausting my body by exposing it to too much external cold? So, in terms of food, am I eating too much sweet? Am I eating too much salt? Am I eating healthy food that is not pleasurable, as opposed to the benefits of deriving pleasure from a really good piece of pie or chocolate? Like, what is cultivation? When do you call something meditation? Like Lillian, my friend who died, Lillian Bridges, used to have this joke that, thank you. She used to have a joke where is like, when you're really rushed, she used to tell people to slow down and embrace doing nothing. And in our culture, there's so much pressure to, and this is certainly, as a German in my family, my parents get really uncomfortable when they see me doing nothing, when they see me not even reading a book. I'm studying, right? I'm increasing my knowledge. Doing nothing is, they're around 90 years old, and they have just recently embraced the fact that they can actually lie down for an hour in the middle of the afternoon. And I was in Vietnam just now, and it was super, super hot. And in Vietnam, in the middle of the day, you have to rest. So I don't know if that's cultivation. Dancing. I love ecstatic dancing. Is that cultivation? I totally, go through my kidney channels and my liver, and I bang myself up while I'm doing ecstatic dancing. It's shaking, right? Like, I milk my goats. I'm doing touch and cheat, like when I like, my goat loves, we touch foreheads every morning. We do this at the end of when I milk her, or with my dog. I don't know. I think we need more play.
But that's your self-cultivation, kind of calibrating yourself with the day, the hour, the minute, what's needed, so you don't expend too much or get too lazy, and then you just sharpen that all the time, right? That would be your cultivation, right? To make sure you're not overdoing it or underdoing it all the time. Is that right?
And then at the same time, you don't want to overanalyze it.
Right? Yeah.
It's the Taoist thing.
It's more of a somatic sense. Rather than intellectual, I wonder how many calories I should eat and how many calories I'm burning. It's more of a somatic sense of like, oh, should I go in the water or not?
Yeah. Really being present with, well, in the Buddhist sense, we've got a human body. That's our form. So we have to honor that form and take care of it, but not pamper it, not overindulge it, but also not overtax it.
Yeah, there's a sweet razor's edge between those, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a tricky one.
Yeah. And then like you said, then in the winter sometimes you have to err more on the pampering side. In the summer you can be less, so it really is changing throughout the seasons, the days and the hours, what you should do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well that's much more nuanced than I thought that answer would be. I thought it'd be strictly 30 minutes of qigong in the morning and then
I've done those things as well. And yeah, I think right now I'm getting older. So I know how precious I've lost, my, like, Lillian was my soul sister. Yeah. And once you lose your closest human being, it's like it just changes the way you are in the world, because you're aware of how precious your time is. So I want to use my time wisely. And part of that is, I want to crank out more books, right? I hear you want Su Wen volume 1 to 3 next. And I'm like, fine, it's going to take me a couple of months and I can do it. But at the same time, the beach is calling. The dog wants a walk. What does Sabine want?
Right.
And then what do my students want? My students want me to be really well prepared, but at the same time, there's also, I'm sure this is the same for every practitioner who listens to us. I feel like the greatest gift, especially in the US right now, it's so important that we cultivate a good way of being in the world, because there are a lot of freaked out people. I mean, I don't know where it's like where you guys are, but I'm on an island. It's rural. It's very mixed. There's a lot of tension. So here's another example. My favorite way of cultivation is I help out in the soup kitchen on Monday mornings in our local soup kitchen. I love doing dishes and I love serving soup.
That's really sweet. Yeah. Anyways, it really is what do you give, not what you get in this world, right? For ultimate cultivation. So that's really nice.
Well, but ultimately it's about what you get.
Well, yeah, but what you get by giving, right? I mean, that's sort of the secret to the whole thing, right? You don't get the mansion and all the fancy cars. That's not where it's at. It appears to be that would be the direction for happiness, but it really isn't.
Yeah. As I'm sure you and your listeners know all too well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be acupuncturists,
right?
Or Chinese medicine practitioners.
This is my teacher. He's a wandering Buddhist monk, so doesn't even have a monastery. He just has a begging bowl, and he just travels around the world. So again, the happiest person I ever met in my life by several miles. And so that's I mean, there's the example. And then I've known some really mega wealthy people that are just beyond miserable. So again, that's clearly not the right direction. Just to hoard, I got mine, Jack, is definitely not the right direction. But also, then you can expend too much outside of yourself too. So that, again, back to our razor's edge idea, you have to put something in, but then especially what are you going to put it out for? And who are you going to put it out for? It's such an important distinction.
Yeah, it's really important to think about.
But it sounds like you're thinking about that all the time. That is your cultivation, right? How to calibrate between in and out.
Yeah. I mean, part of me is like, I love writing poetry and I only have so much verbal creativity. And then some days, like, I'm tempted, like Lao Tzu, to ride away on the water buffalo. And because the older I get, the more I feel like, and here we are having a podcast and I teach online. And the older I get, the more I feel like there's such a limitation to verbal intellectual exchange. And what really matters, I'm sure you know this, right, Angelique? Like holding somebody's hand.
Yeah.
There's you can say something, but it's the presence.
Very much. Yeah.
You're right. You're right, Sabine. Angelique's background is in hospice, so she really knows that the medicine of holding someone's hand.
Yeah. And the older I get, the more I just appreciate silence, which is really funny for a writer. But
the space between the words is important, right?
Yeah.
All right, Sabina, we're going to, thanks so much for carving out a little slice of time with
Yes,
us. We
thank
really
you.
appreciate it. It is a real pleasure talking to you. And then I hope it's really nice to have this nice conversation with you. And then hopefully this can just resonate out and help our fellow practitioners. Yeah, thanks so much for the time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Angelique. It was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you, Toby. I'm really grateful that we keep having little opportunities to get to know each other. And thank you both for what you're doing.
Oh, thanks so much. A
Yes.
real pleasure. Everyone take good care, okay?
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.